The Passionate Leader, because leadership without passion is just a title.
Meeting. We got a collapse in the garage. Get the squad back equipment in here. We got an I-beam gone to a firefighter.
Get that out, urgent, transmit a second along.
This is where titles end and leadership begins. Ask yourself, has the fire service become so focused on people earning a seat at the table that we've stopped noticing that some of those tables have quietly turned into echo chambers? Places where disagreements get treated like disrespect, where people are quicker to block uncomfortable conversations and actually have them, and where some platforms seem more focused on the number of followers and influence than actually pushing the fire service forward. Because maybe the real question isn't who earned a seat at the table. Maybe it should be, is this table helping the fire service grow at all? Welcome back to the Passionate Leader podcast. Before we go any further, I want to introduce something new to the platform. Over the past year, the podcast has grown through conversations with incredible guests from across the fire service. But sometimes there are topics that don't need an interview. They need a reflection. They need uncomfortable conversations. They need honesty. So moving forward, alongside with our regular guest scheduled episodes, we're launching a new independent series called Ask Yourself. Seems only fitting given how we open up all of our shows. But it's true. A call to action, a self-reflection, just something to kind of get you to open up and really think about stuff. These episodes are going to challenge culture, leadership, mindset, ego, growth, and conversations happening across the fire service and beyond. They're not intended to attack people, but more so to encourage reflection, perspective, and real dialogue. Because growth doesn't always come in agreement. Let's be very real with ourselves. Sometimes it comes from being willing to hear something very uncomfortable. And with that said, welcome to the very first episode, everybody, of Ask Yourself. Let's get right to it. So the earn your seat at the table concept. I'm a subscriber to this. I do believe in it. And I understand that there are certain, proverbial tables that we need to earn our seats at. We push it a lot in the fire service. Earn your seat at the table. Don't push your way into certain groups or niches, whatever we want to call them. But truthfully speaking, we need to actually evaluate the table itself. Is that table that you're trying to fight to get a seat at really worth it? Are you honestly going to be a better person, a better firefighter, better father, mother, daughter, brother, sister, if you have a seat at that table? And the bigger question, does a seat at that proverbial table come with a cost? Because if the table comes with a cost, in my own honest opinion, it's not a table worth sitting at. There shouldn't be anything that comes at a cost of a loss, whether it be talking to other platforms, doing collaborations, working with other training groups, attending trainings, going to conferences. If being part of that table that you want to be so happily sitting at comes at a cost of missing out on all that, you're selling your soul to the devil. Open up, guys. Let's be very real with ourselves on this. So earning your seats. Let's be real. Credibility does matter. It's important that people that are at our tables have a vested interest. They have knowledge. They have an understanding. And honestly, in our case, that they're passionate. They understand what it takes. We say it a lot during our lives, our weekly kitchen table talks, videos that we release across the platform. Passion is huge. What's probably more huge than that and more important than that for us is having a mission-first mindset. Ask yourself, is what I'm doing right now working toward the mission and bettering the mission of our goal? If the answer is no, then why are you doing it? Experience matters, but there's a fine difference. We talk about it a lot again through all of our platforms. 40 years on the job does not equate to 40 years of hard-earned time. You can have a veteran or a volunteer who's got 40 years of service that might see 30 calls their entire career. It doesn't necessarily equate to experience. Now, they may have some administrative experience. No matter what you do in the fire service, in 40 years, you're going to learn something. But the question is, what value does that have? Are you hanging your hat on that value? And truthfully speaking, nothing is valuable outside of your own realm. I don't care if you have 5 bugles on your chest, I'll respect you. But if you're a fire chief who talks down to people, I'm going to give you a news flash. We all go in the same size box or urn when our time here is done. So why does putting people down and talking down to people make you feel better? It's an inferiority complex or superiority, whatever the case is. Let's get over it. Let's move on. Incompetence matters. Pay attention to the ones that you're listening to. You know, we do a lot of discussion on vetting the process. I sat as a guest on a podcast, the B1C podcast and consultants not that long ago. And we talked about that. They asked me, what's my one, kind of how I end the podcast here, guys. What's your one raw, unfiltered, unadulterated piece of advice? And the question that they asked me was, what would you tell somebody as far as, looking for a mentor? And it's a simple concept. Vet the process. Look into it, right? Because sometimes a person that you first meet when you walk into the fire service and firehouse, that might not be the right person to have. They may be a bottom feeder. They might be somebody who is just retired in place, so to speak. We don't need that. So vet your process. When you start working toward getting a seat at this table, pay attention to who's sitting there. Pay attention to how they interact with others in social media, others around them, in person. Are they putting in the work or do they just have the catchy phrases? I say it a lot. What do they have for credentials? Have they shown the initiative to go and get a degree? Do they carry multiple degrees? Or do they sit back and lean on the experience is good enough? Because if that's the case, guys, we're not talking about competence here. We're talking about people who are pushing their resumes. And we don't need people pushing their resumes. So ask yourself, is that seat at this table worth it? If you can't answer that unequivocally with a yes, move along. Avoid it like the plague. There are other tables. And if you can't find a good table, by the golly, create your own. It's not that hard. Just start your own people. Look for somebody who's humble, right? Pay attention to how the people talk. If the people at this table or your influencers that you're paying attention to now, they use the phrase I, me, mine, they're not there for your best interest or for the mission. I promise you that. Humility is huge. If you do not have humility, you cannot move a mission forward. So look into that. Think about it for a second. Humility. We all heard that, Chief. My budget. I have this. I send you guys to this. I'll do that for you guys. No, we talked about it Sunday night on a different live that I was on about how we are just stewards of the craft. These are not our firehouses. They're our citizens. These are not our fire trucks. Again, they're our citizens. We are just chosen stewards to make sure that those fire trucks stay running, stay clean, and stay battle ready for when they have an emergency at their house. The firehouse that we have all of our pranks and all of our fun. Again, that's not ours. We're running a short-term lease. The length of the lease is our career. Our duty is to make sure that that place stays up. We keep it in good shape. And if we need a new one, we let the residents know if it's fallen apart, if we've outgrown its size, or if it's just inadequate for our needs. We're stewards of the people, guys. And truthfully, let's be real. Not everybody deserves instant influence simply because they made a social media account. Some people do because they go right for the throat. We've had some pretty good success with the Passionate Leader platform across all of the socials. But I'll tell you right now, back to the humility. Let's be very real. I couldn't even tell you what we have for followers across the platforms. Couldn't even tell you how many times these episodes of the podcast get listened to. Don't care. Why is that? Ask yourself, does it really matter how many people listen to a podcast? How many subscribers a channel has? Does it mean that the message is any more or less depending upon how many people that they have as followers, likes, shares, subscribes, heart emojis? The only person it matters to is those with an ego. And egos eat brains. So here's the deal. Somewhere along the line, we earned that seat. And it started becoming less about development and more about gatekeeping. There are a lot of people who fight and claw like a puppy at a front door because it's cold outside and they went out to go pee and now they're done and they want back in. Sometimes people claw so hard at that door that people just finally let them in. They're just sick of hearing the noise. But that's all it is noise, right? Think about it. Let it set for a second. Squeaky wheel gets the grease, right? How about the concept of staying in your lane? It happens a lot. So you'll see, Passionate Leader started off. We started off this platform, you know, because I knew there needed to be an outlet. This was our outlet, and I say our. You look behind the facade of the Passionate Leader. The Passionate Leader is all of us, all of you, all of the viewers, all of the listeners, all of the people who interact on the social media, all of the people who reach out asking for help, offer, condolences, ask for, some counsel with something that is happening at their firehouse or even in their personal life, right? Those are your lanes. That's your outlet. But stay in your lane. You see a lot of social media influencers get out there and they start off with one idea and they kind of work to another. I challenge you this, and on this, I should say. If your lane is going to be the I worked hard and worked underneath a poor chief, then ride that. You start kind of working into the leadership realm, people are going to ask questions. You see a lot of leadership platforms out there. Again, vet your process. Look into their credentials. Have they ever been a leader before? If the answer is no, ask yourself this. Why are you following somebody who has never led a crew on a fireground? Now, I'm not saying that you can't be a leader if you're not a boss or you don't have a title. That's not the point. But what I'm saying is if you're going to sit in front of a stage of a bunch of people and talk about how to be a leader and you've never been one, all you're offering is an opinion. You've never lived it. There are certain positions in the fire service that I simply can't talk about either. Never been a fire chief. Might be a deputy, but I'm not a fire chief. So I can't talk negatively about how a fire chief does his or her job. I've never held that position. I can certainly opine on that. I have pretty educated guesses. But until I've been a fire chief, all I'm doing is talking out my backside. Go through your life with a little grace, guys. Think about it. Now ask yourself, how long has that person been in the fire service? We talk a lot about experience and needing to be in the fire service for a little bit. Do you think that there's a little bit of a minimum amount of time that people need before they become an influencer? I have a really good friend who runs an amazing training company out in North Carolina. I leave names out because names don't mean anything. But think about it for a second. What do you need the notoriety for? Be honest. Healthy leadership, guys, creates room for conversation. Insecure leadership protects the room from it. I'll say that again. Healthy leadership creates room for conversation. Insecure leadership protects the room from it. When you have disagreements at the firehouse, do people try to shut you out? Do they try to change the subject? How about on social media? That's a little bit easier for us because we can do it from the comfort of our house. Have you ever tried to open a decent dialogue with somebody else on social media? A good, solid professional dialogue, only to have them block you because what you said doesn't match what they believe? We have. And I'll tell you what, I lived rent free for a little bit in my mind, but ultimately, after seeing people perform, post stuff like that, I feel bad because clearly they made a decision to move along because their mission didn't align with ours. And that's fine. Our missions do not have to be in step with each other. The only ultimate thing that we have to have in the fire service is a mission whose end result benefits our citizens. Sometimes the mission might start off that way, but with a little bit of notoriety and fame and a little bit of validation, people's mission gets blurred, I should say. My gosh. But it's one of those things. So let's talk about something that we talk a lot about on the Passionate Leader, and that's echo chambers. It's becoming more popular in the fire service. In fact, I had about half an hour to an hour ago, I just had a good friend send me a clip from a nationally ran podcast talking about echo chambers. Eerily similar to what we talk about, and that's fine. Because I'll tell you what, the level of eerily similar was almost as if notes were getting taken from a playbook. But truthfully, while the title in the playbook may say the passionate leader, the ultimate end goal is to make the fire service better. It's our fire service. Every time I've sat down in an interview, people will ask about this town or that town. And I always kind of equate it to this: the fire service as a whole is here to serve citizens. Yes, ultimately, your first level of support is for the citizens of the community that you are employed by or live in if you're a volunteer. But our duty is to the citizens of the world, of the nation, of the area. We just happen to have that. That's our home team. That's our duty. So it doesn't matter whether another platform or not shares the same viewpoints. In fact, it's great. I love when missions and values align. That's when things really can happen in the fire service. That's when we can create actual solid tables where there's room for growth, room for development, and room for everybody to move the needle forward. But sometimes people are really good. Social media algorithms line up, sends their content to people. They get more followers. Their ego gets a little inflated. They feel better. They say catchy phrases. They say mean things. Can they back it up? I don't know. Try calling them out. Ask yourself this: when's the last time you called somebody out on social media about something? I'll tell you right now, really good friend of mine. He's a regular on the lives. He's going to be teaching at our conference in October. Called me out one time. I said something on Facebook or Instagram, one of those social media platforms, that he didn't fully agree with. He called my ass on the carpet. But what's funny is I had a dialogue with him. We had a back and forth. It was not a disagreement. It was not a. It was not a. Sorry, it's not a disagreement. It was not a spat. It was a debate. It was two firefighters who were equally as passionate about the fire service and pretty much equally as passionate about the topic. Now I don't remember what that topic was because, truthfully, it's irrelevant for the point. The moral of the story is have those hard conversations because good friendships can come out of that. Entirely too many people, sorry, will shut you down if you have disagreements. Start looking at conversations as more of a debate, right? Bend, give a little, but ultimately, guys, just have compassion for your fellow brother or sister because equally, we're all coming from the same viewpoint of trying to make the fire service better. Yeah, some have opinionated things. Let's be real. I'm pretty opinionated about some stuff. I've said some egregious things in my career. I said some egregious things recently, and I'll probably say some more for the third time, egregious things in the future. It's going to happen. But I trust that with the people that are built within this table that we have, our circle, so to speak, that people will call me out. Again, this afternoon I had a conversation with my man, and he told me, he said, "Hey, you start stepping out of line, I'm going to call you out on it." And I asked him to. I want him to. So I ask you guys, do that. Make sure that when you start and you get your seat at that table, that it's with people that you can trust with your life, with your family's life, and somebody that will tell you you're doing something so crazy, so stupid, and that you need to stop. Those are your people. If you aren't surrounded by those kind of people at that table, here's a news flash. You're at one of those echo chambers. Don't do it. Right? But they happen. These echo chambers happen because people are seeking validation. They may have had a troubled childhood, grew up in a one parent household, worked for a horrible boss, had a bad shift, or not a shift in one singular shift, but worked on a bad shift, whether it be second, third, fourth, or a bad engine house, whatever the case is. Maybe they got transferred out from the ladder and now they're doing squad stuff. I get it, but there's a fine line. A post was just recently put out on social media about that, about being the guy in the room with the biggest issues, the trauma trophies, if you will. And it happens. People are seeking validation. They couldn't get it where they were. And it's easy to give validation and get validation in the social media realm because people don't know your background story. Again, I said it earlier, vet the process. Vet the process. Pay attention to your people. Pay attention to what they say. Pay attention to what their message is. Is it the same message over and over again? Has that hero of yours been on a million podcasts and it's just the same story over and over and over again? That's a problem. If they have nothing new to give to podcasts years after being in the circuit themselves as a guest, and it's just the same thing, that's an echo chamber. It's a wash, rinse, repeat. We don't need that nonsense, guys, right? But they happen. Podcasts recycle in the same guests, right? There are a lot of fellow podcasters out there, great guys, great brothers and sisters, great friends. And most of the times people understand that together we can be a lot stronger. I was asked one time how I felt about working with somebody who was also a podcaster, and the word competition was thrown out there. But I'm going to be super honest with you. It's only a competition if you let it. And why does it need to be a competition? Especially if they're two different things. If you have a leadership podcast and a crocheting podcast, there is no competition between those two. Because while we're teaching about leadership, they're teaching about crocheting or knitting grooming a cat, whatever the case is. Even if you have two leadership podcasts, it doesn't matter. There's plenty of room in this ocean, right? Be real with ourselves. Our conferences. Sit back and look at your conferences and pay attention. Do they push nothing more than the names that are there? The number of people that they bring in by the tens of thousands? If that is their parameter for change and reach in the fire service, here's a newsflash. You're just a statistic. So you can go to all these flashy fire service conferences and all you want. But if all you care about and all they care about is how many people they get in the door, they do not care about your growth. All they care about is their numbers. You're just a statistic. But we've gotten to a point, guys and girls and kids, if we're listening, where some people would rather protect their comfort than defend their ideas. There's again, there's a fine line between that disagreement and a debate. Disagreement is not disrespect. It's only disrespectful if name calling starts, if people start calling into question certain things. And there's no reason to. Because if people can only argue in a disrespectful manner, then they're already losing their debate themselves. So move along. You don't have to have everybody at your table. Be very selective with who sits at your table. There's a healthy level of friction in the fire service, in any role nowadays. Think of it. For those of us that are married or in a steady relationship, or even one that just fell apart, what has kept it together? Ask yourself what made that relationship work? What made that relationship fall apart? Or ask yourself, what can I do to make it better? There's a lot of give and go. Right now in the office down here, we're sharing a computer. Mrs. Passionate Leader was down here earlier working on some schoolwork, and now I'm down here recording a podcast. There's some give and some go. How it has to be, guys. And you have to understand sometimes you're not going to win arguments. Know when to walk away from your arguments. What I will say, walking away from your arguments does not mean blocking people. Blocking people or ignoring them, ghosting them, whatever the case is, that shows your weakness, not theirs. So just move along. Simple. Simple as that. And let's be real. The only thing that grows in darkness is mushrooms and drama. Growth requires being in that uncomfort zone. You got to come out of your shell, out from underneath that rock, and have those difficult conversations. They're really not that hard to have. Even sometimes a simple, hey man, can we just have a chat, might open up the floodgates. Because that person might be waiting to have that conversation with you too, and they didn't know how to start. Be the bigger professional and open up that conversation. Hey, you got a second so we can chat? And then talk and spill it out. But be respectful. Have the debate and move on. One way that I found that helped me, I should say, with hard conversations is starting off with what I expect and anticipate the end to be. Solid example, this could be a disciplinary hearing or sit down with fellow firefighter. Hey, at the end of this, we're going to sit down with what our goals are to move forward so this doesn't happen again. Give you a better understanding of what our policies and our code of conduct is. Pretty simple. Pretty simple because that opens it up. Now they understand your expectations. Episodes 26 and 27 of this podcast, we sat down with Jason Freeman and our fellow brother, Big John Chamberlain, hit us up the first of this year. I'm looking back at my show notes, guys, so hang on a second. Big John Chamberlain was episode 43. Two individuals who talked about setting the expectations from day one. Two guys who have been immensely successful in their careers, but they understood, their men and women understood what was expected of them because of those expectation meetings. So have that expectation when you have that hard conversation. It'll set the conversation up for success. Trust me. There's a lot of good happening in the fire service right now. We have passionate people, good instructors, firefighters that I saw were more than hungry to learn. Smaller departments are starting to invest in the growth of their firefighters. One of the coolest things I saw were genuine conversations that were happening in hallways, around the stadium, in the vendor area, and just throughout the environment in general. Everybody was stoked. And that's what fire conferences are all about, right? Whatever the case is, get out of your circle, get out of your clique. The tighter that you stay in your circle, the heavier the echo chamber. Sometimes people just are there to push their own agendas, and you have to pay attention to that. Vet your process, listen to their dialogue and how they talk, pay attention to their body language and everything. Are they energetic and charismatic? Do they have great visions and great goals and they keep the mission first, that's probably somebody you want to hang out with. But if they sit there and they say a lot about I and I bring this class and I teach this and I'll be here for that, that's not somebody you want to surround yourself with because they're likely going to have you around long enough until your value to them is dead and gone. But you see, I don't want to say negative or talk negative the whole time. So before we wrap up our first Ask Yourself episode, ask yourself, what can you do better? I'll ask myself that. I'll answer it for you right now. We got to find the greater good in things. It's easier to get pulled down into the drama and the negativity because it feels good. But what people don't really like to talk about, it is equally as easy to get pulled up into the positive, to be energetic. Think of it this way. We all remember what it was like when we first joined the fire service and we were super excited to get in there. The smell of the rubber tires, probably a little bit of axle grease dripping on the floor, leftover smoke from last night's building fire, whatever the case is. We all remember that. We remember being that young kid full of it, full of energy, full of excitement, full of charisma, enthusiasm, and any other fancy verb we want to throw in there. How many people have had the ability to actually bring new people into their agency? One of the most exciting things is when we bring new people into the volunteer side. 18, 19, 20, 25-year olds, even some older ones. But they're eager to join, eager to learn, and eager to help. And as long as you let it, that energy is contagious. Let it be. Let it relight your fire. Let it keep you passionate and let it keep you moving forward. Ask yourself, what are you doing to help that new person who walks through the door? Ask yourself, is your earlier you proud or would they be proud of the firefighter that you became? And what's one thing that you've done in your career that your younger self didn't expect to happen, whether it be good or bad? So we'll close up real quick in our first Ask Yourself episode. These will be considerably shorter than our regular guest episodes. But we got to be real about some things, guys. These are gut questions, call to actions, reasons that we exist in the fire service and to be there for each other. Coming up, we will have more episodes. If you do have ideas for an Ask Yourself episode, a topic that's been grinding your gears or things that we need to talk about or that you would like us to cover, please don't be afraid to send it to me, jp at thepassionateleader.com or thepassionateleaderpodcast at gmail.com. You can hit us up on all of the socials, follow us across all the platforms and everything like that. So let's go with some final thoughts and we'll get into it and we'll get out of here so you guys can get on with your day. The fire service doesn't need less disagreement. It needs healthier disagreement. And I think the best way we can explain that to ourselves is we need more debate, not disagreement. It doesn't need bigger echo chambers. It just needs stronger conversations. Have a hard conversation. Have the strong conversation with your people. And it definitely doesn't need more people protecting their seat at the table and hiding it under the cloak of leadership. It's often said that a leader's job is to make the next person in the next round of firefighters' lives easier. Leave it better than we found it. A follower of the show one time once said during a live, our job as fire service professionals and fire service leaders is to make sure that our ceiling is the next generation's basement. Let that sit in for a second. And what does that mean for you? Your highest level of potential that you could earn would actually be the lowest level of potential that the next person starts at. That is your job as a leader in the fire service. So as we close out, ask yourself, how many people are on your blocked list? Why they ended up there? in whether every one of those situations was truly, or sorry, if any of them were about protecting your peace or protecting yourself from discomfort, disagreement, or perspectives that challenge the way that you think. Ask yourself whether healthy disagreements could come down to growth or created growth, rather. Let me rephrase that. Ask yourself whether healthy disagreement could have created growth instead of division if a conversation was allowed to have happened. And finally, ask the people in your circles the same questions, because the answers might reveal more about the echo chambers we've created than we're willing to admit. We'll end this episode like we do with every podcast. If something today hit home, please don't sit on it, share it. If there's somebody in your life that needs to hear something that was said today, spread the word. If you have something to contribute to the Ask Yourself series or any other series, have guest suggestions or anything like that, again, please reach out. Be the leader that you needed when you first joined the fire service, the one that you yearned for throughout your career. And as always, lead with passion, serve with humility, and leave no room for bottom feeders. Until we meet again, guys, stay safe.